Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be showing you another 10 things that you can do in your sketchbook. I've not done one of these for a while, but I know that they're like my most popular videos on my channel, so I will continue to make these videos even though they take forever, but it's okay because they're fun to make. As usual, the ideas will be varying in difficulty from easy to hard, so that anyone can do them depending on your skill level. And without further ado, let us begin with the video. Our first activity to do in your sketchbook is to colour in a graphic novel, or any illustrated book of your choosing. And when I say colour in, I don't mean take the actual book and colour in it. I mean trace it and transfer it into your sketchbook and then colour it in. To trace something, you just want to lay your tracing paper flat over what you want to copy and then go over the lines of the picture, and then go to your sketchbook, flip the tracing paper over and go over the lines again, and it will make a very light imprint in your sketchbook. And you just want to go over that very lightly in pencil to fill in any bits that the tracing paper missed. I didn't show myself doing that bit because that took a very long time to do and it would be very boring for you to watch. The graphic novel I used for this is called Heartstopper. It's by Alice Oseman, and you might have heard of it from the Netflix series that came out recently that's based on it. So far, the series has 4 books in total, and they're really good. I'd really recommend reading them. If you haven't, I will leave the link to Alice Oseman's Instagram and website in the description if you're interested in checking out other stuff that she's done. I drew Nick and Charlie, who are the main characters of the series, and I coloured them in with watercolour paint. And even though watercolour paint is quite quick, this did take me a very long time. I did use pencils occasionally for details like their shoes, because my watercolour brush is very fat and can only really do thick things. I also dotted some leaves around, because if you've read the books, you'll know that the leaves are kind of dotted around throughout the book. I love how Alice Oseman can just illustrate the characters with such simple faces but still convey their expressions perfectly. It's very cool, and I wish I could do that too. I did put a lot of time in this, but it was very rewarding. I really enjoyed the experience, and the end result's pretty cool as well. I think it's cool to have something a bit different in my sketchbook that uses a different art style to usual. Our next activity of the video is to make character profiles with a window page in between. The middle page is what's going to be the window page. You want to draw a character on either side of that page, and then draw shapes with an object, like a square object or just like a cup, and use those to be the shapes for your windows so that you can see the characters on either side when you flip the window over. This is quite a fiddly process, but I'm going to show you how to do it, and it's very cool looking once you finish. To make the windows, hold both pieces of paper together and point them towards the light. You'll see an outline of the shape through the paper. Get the object you draw around and line it up, and then draw around that to make your window outline. Then get your paint and paint carefully around the edges of the circle. Once the paint is dry, you can pop a pair of scissors through the hole and then carefully cut around the edge, and then repeat this process on any other windows that you might have. The characters I made profiles of today were Ace and Toby, who are 2 of my 4 main characters. On the main pages, I wrote things like their family members and their personality. And then on the painted page, I wrote things that they tend to hide, things like their insecurities or things that you might not know about them at first glance. I also made little badges of groups that they belong to. Toby's is a skating group and Ace's is a hockey team. This one takes quite a while, but only because you need to wait for the paint to dry before you work on it. It's really fun, and if you have characters that you love, like I love my characters, it's a really cool exercise to do to get to know them better. Number 3 is create a contrasting scene, and what I mean by that is draw a landscape or a scene of any sort, and then make one half of it drastically different to the other half. For example, what I've done here is I've connected both sides by a river that joins up and runs through. On one side, I've got a dad and his kid, and they're in a meadow and they're having a picnic, and they're surrounded by flowers and insects and butterflies and things. And then on the other side, it's this sort of alternate world, this like parallel reality sort of thing, where they're by the river and it's full of dead things and plastic and pollution, and there's a dead carcass behind them, and the grass is all gone, and the sky's filled with smog, and it's a bit bleak and sad. So it's a bit of a statement on the environment and the damage that we're doing to the planet, and what life could end up being like if we don't change what we're doing. I didn't show you the sketching process for this just because it takes forever. You probably know by now I hardly ever show the sketching process in my videos, but I coloured it in with just my normal coloured pencils that I use. I'm not very good at using these on anything other than people, really. They tend to look a bit sort of childish and crude. On the happy side, I used loads of like greens and blues and colourful colours, and then on the other side I just used brown and grey pretty much, and that was it. I outlined the characters' faces a little bit and their arms, but that was it really. I didn't want to make it look too harsh, but they needed a little bit more definition. And I think it looked pretty cool once I'd finished. I think it managed to capture what I was going for, and I hope you like it too. On a more upbeat note, number 4 is creating a family tree of all your characters. I understand that some people probably don't have entire families planned out for all their characters and ancestry and stuff, but I do, because I'm weird like that. You don't have to make it as complicated as mine is, but like you can just have about 3 people in yours opposed to 20, which is what I ended up with. I'll admit I did get a little bit carried away. For this one I used my 4 main characters, Jaden, Toby, Jake and Ace, and I just mapped out their siblings and their parents and their kids, which as I said is a grand total of 20 people, so I kept the faces nice and simple. I used my normal art style. I didn't do anything drastic or complicated with this. I just outlined them with biro and then coloured them in with my watercolour pens. I tried doing this ages ago, but I only managed to do about 3 people on it because I was determined to make them all super complicated and have full-on bodies and outfits and things. But I would recommend not doing that because that takes forever and it's super demotivating, so just do like headshots or head and torsos and that'll be good enough. My favourite characters that I drew here are probably Ebony and Ava Jane, who are the daughters of the main 4 ones, and I just liked their designs because they're not the ones that I normally draw. They're definitely not like the most common siblings of all the little children. I mostly just draw Jaden Jr. or Tegan, to be honest, but I also drew these flowers in the corner just to tie it all together, make it look a bit more like art. And it's finished. Here you go. Marvel at its glory. The next thing I've got for you to do in your sketchbook is to fill a spread with drawings that you've used references for. These could be off of Pinterest, off of Instagram or Google or whatever you normally use to get your reference pictures. It could even be from real life. The theme I chose was Queens. I found some pictures of some women in crowns and I made a little Pinterest board and then I compiled them on my page. And as you can see, I did do 2 before I started filming. I actually lost the footage for those because I'm dumb and I just deleted them without thinking. I don't know why. I did show you the sketching process for this, just because I wasn't going to colour them in. I was just going to use biro and do some shading, and I wanted you to see more than just me going over outlines. I tried to vary the sizes and positions as much as I could just to make the page more interesting and more artistic looking. And although I did use reference images, I combined them with my own style and I adapted them to how I wanted them to look. Once I'd finished drawing all the queens, I got a Posca pen out in the colour light blue, and I went around the edges of all the drawings. I also added some little extras to fill up space, like patterns and eyes, and then I gave them borders with the Posca pen as well. This was just to fill up the space and also to make it a little bit more interesting. And I also drew a few more crowns as well, just to emphasize the queen's thing. And I added some polka dots in the background with different colours of blue and also black. And I really like how this one turned out. The next idea is to draw a character aging. So separate your page into boxes and then draw the character over different periods of their life in each one. I drew 12 boxes, and in each one he aged 2 years. He went from 0 to 22 years old. He's not a specific character that I've made before, he's just a sort of generic Joe. To make this as effective as possible, each box shouldn't be too different from the one either side of it. But it should have small differences that are exaggerated over time and become gradually more noticeable. With mine, other than getting gradually bigger, his hair got gradually longer at the fringe and shorter at the back. I kept the colour scheme very similar throughout. His skin stayed the same, his hair stayed the same until the end, and he was always wearing red. And I just worked on the colours one by one. As you can see, I made his hair blue towards the end, just to make it very contrasting. I was quite happy with it once it was finished. It's not the most amazing thing I've ever done, but it's fine. Idea number 7 is to make an animal food combo. This is pretty self-explanatory. It basically just means take an animal, take food, and then merge them together. And no, you cannot just draw a cow, because cow is already technically food, because that's not very imaginative. You could do things like a cat burger or a realistic bear that's a gummy bear, if that makes sense. Or you could do something like what I've done, which is rabbits, but they're actually ice cream, and they're in an ice cream cone. I think it's called Neapolitan when they're the 3 main flavours of ice cream: strawberry, vanilla, and chocolate. I don't know, I don't really like strawberry ice cream or chocolate ice cream, so this isn't really my cup of tea. To do this, I used acrylic paints, and yes, I did on occasion use my fingers to blend them. I know there are better ways of doing that, but I'm not a very highly sophisticated being. Once all the blending was dry, I did some details like the icing that was on their heads and dripping out of the cone. I also used red to give them little fruits on their heads, like a cherry and a strawberry, and I added little green stalks to those, and then I did like a little chocolate band around the cone and added sprinkles to that, and then I did their faces, which you can't see because I was stupidly not in frame. I also added little details to their feet, and then I got my pencils out and I redefined all of the details because I have not mastered details with paints yet. But I'm getting there. One day I will be able to use paint properly. One of the key things I discovered to this is to not think about it too much. If these are sentient creatures that are being put into food, or maybe if they're just food that appear to be sentient creatures. It's either way, it's a little bit creepy. Just don't think about it like that. It's just art, it's not real. Here it is, it's finished, and I think they do look a little scared. Chocolate and vanilla look terrified. Number 8 is to draw your favourite scene from your favourite movie. It should be pretty easy to tell what I'm doing. I'm doing the bit from The Lord of the Rings when they're hiding from the ring wraith under the tree roots, right at the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring. This isn't necessarily my favourite bit of the film, but it's definitely the most iconic and interesting to paint, I'd say. I did not use a reference picture for this because all of the shots of this bit in the film were like at a different angle to what I wanted to do. So the characters aren't like lifelike, realistic copies, they're more my style, and I think you can tell who's who. I used watercolors for this, and I really enjoyed doing all like the backgrounds, like the background that I'm doing now of like the trees and things, which are all like blended together because it's out of focus, and the same with the bits behind the hobbits in the roots area. I painted in the characters last, I don't know why, it's just how it turned out, and I think the character that looks most not like the character in the film is definitely Pippin. Like, who even is that? Doesn't even look like him. The hair's not even the same colour. But I think the other ones all look pretty similar to the characters in the film. After I'd finished the painting, as usual, I had to get my pencils out because it wasn't very well defined, and yeah, I just needed to add the details back in. This is always my favourite part of anything that I do, like the adding the details back at the end, because it just starts to look less like a painty mess and more like a actual artwork, if it can be called that. I'm very pleased with this one. It's one of my favourites that I did today. It isn't the best, but it's still pretty cool and it was very fun to make. Idea number 9 is to create a name page. This is also very fun and it's quite easy as well, and you can be quite creative with this as well. Basically, you write your name in big letters and then you fill in those big letters with different things that you like or things that make up your personality, things you like to do, all sorts of things that basically just represent you. For example, I drew my cat, I drew some like D&D references like swords and dragon, and I drew pizza because I like pizza. I drew the Ring of Power from Lord of the Rings, and I drew a couple things from like games that I like. The hardest part of this I found was actually just trying to come up with ideas of things to draw, because I've got a very short name. It's only 3 letters, but it still took me such a long time to actually come up with things to put in. And some of the things are just so random, like they're not things I like particularly, but they're just like space fillers. Like there's a couple random leaves and flowers in there. This could also be a pretty cool thing to do for like a birthday present for someone. You could write their name and then fill their name in with things that that person likes, put it in a frame, bish bash bosh, easy present. Once I'd done all the pen outline, I coloured it in with my favourite trusty pencils, and then I got a black paint and I just painted around the edges just because it was a little empty looking, and I felt like the black paint really helped all the colours to look a bit more colourful and saturated and pop out a little bit more. Even though it's just solidly colouring up in a background one colour, it still took a pretty long time because I had to go around with a teeny tiny brush all of the little details around the edge and make sure I wasn't accidentally painting over any of the stuff I'd done. But after I'd done that, painting in the rest was very easy. Here is the finished result. I really love this page. It's definitely not my favourite, but I still think it's pretty cool. And the 10th and final idea of today is to draw something really, really weird or surreal or strange that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. For example, I have drawn a cat in sunglasses having a little swim in a teacup that is full of tea. Now, this is strange because if you didn't know, let me just explain this to you. Cats do not like to swim, as far as I'm concerned. And what's more, they are not small enough to fit in a teacup. And also, they don't like to play with little beach balls. I mean, they like yarn balls, but not beach balls. Now, I might be overselling this to you a bit, but it is quite fun to come up with little strange scenarios and then painting them. I used watercolors yet again for this, because reasons, I don't know, it's fast, it makes me feel sophisticated, like I'm using paint, but I'm not completely failing at it. It makes me feel like I'm better than I really am. Once I'd coloured in the main bit, I painted the table brown, and I painted the background a sort of blue. I mean, it's not a sort of blue, it is blue. At this point, I was not very impressed with this one. I was sort of regretting it. I thought it was too simple and it wasn't complicated enough. or detailed enough. But then I cracked out the trusty pencil yet again, and I just did some shading around the edge of the cup, and that really made it look a lot better. I also did this on the inside of the cup in the T to make that look a little more detailed as well. I went over with my pen again, little details that I'd missed with the paint, and I also added details on the cup itself with the pencils. And finally, I got out my metallic gold pen and I added little highlight detail things to the edges. I really like this one. It actually turned out so much better than I thought it would, and I'm very proud of it. Now I'm just going to go through and show you all the pages that we've done today. So this is the first one, which was the colouring in a comic or graphic novel. This is the next one, which was the creating character profiles with a window page in the middle. And next is the third one, which was create a contrasting scene. And then here's the family tree. Here's the collection of reference images. This is the character aging. This is the animal food combo. This is the movie scene. And this is the name page. And this is the weird, surreal, nonsensical one. And then I did that after to fill the page up. That's not part of the video. Thank you very much for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed, and I'll make another episode very soon. Bye.